907. 907, you're live. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening, young man. My name is Laura. I'm calling from the great state of Alaska. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine, Laura. What's on your mind?
Well, I was born in 1945. My father was born in 1915. I grew up with a grandmother who was born in 1892. And I have history beside me. And before there was technology, we didn't know about a lot of things until the mail get across the world, you know? And then this thing came along called the radio. And then we started, you know, nobody worried about if someone was a Republican or if they were a Democrat. They wondered if you were a good neighbor. I can remember back when I was young, there was a man, he was very, very mean to people and hurtful. But at 70 below zero, his cabin burned down. And everybody from the entire community came. And we rebuilt his home. We knocked down trees and we rebuilt his home in 2 days. We didn't ask if he was a Democrat. We didn't ask if he was a Republican. We didn't ask what he could do for us. We already knew he didn't like us. But the fact was he was a child of the universe. And he wasn't going to freeze because we didn't like him or he didn't like us. What we've gotten away from was we've gotten too smart for our own damn pants. People look at a computer screen and they don't look at people in the eye anymore. They don't see each other's hearts. 60% of us live at or below the poverty level. Most of those people, 44% of those people work for a living and are homeless. And out of those 60%, 35% of those are children. And I remember the days when there were, you hunt for your food, and you gardened, and you put up your preserves, and you didn't have but one pair of shoes, maybe two. You took care of one another. You were brother and sister. It didn't matter what your skin color was. I've traveled this world and I've lived in 44 out of the 50 states. I was a protester during the 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s because I could see where this world was going to once Nixon took us off the gold standard dollar and put us on the oil dollar, the petrodollar. We got in bed with the Saudi Arabians, and we decided between the Saudi Arabians, the United Kingdom, France, that we were going to divide the African nation up of all of its wealth. And who came out ahead in the world wars was the United States. Why? Because the Russians lost 25 million regular people fighting with nothing more than shovels and what they could put their hands on against tanks. And in New York City, we turned away the Jewish people and returned them back to be killed. We had to be drugged into that war. And at that time, the Russians were our allies. And they put their blood on the line for us. And they put the blood on the line for the world because the Germans almost won. Now look at us. We have abdicated our Constitution. Our Congress has abdicated its constitutional duty to be the only one to ever declare war upon anyone. We're the only country that has ever dropped an atom bomb, not once, but twice on a humanity. And now we pimp ourselves out like whores to any country, because ever since 9/11, Congress has not ever once said we were in war. We have gone into each and every one of these countries, Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Afghanistan, without approval. Those are illegal wars. Right now, Syria and Iran are sovereign nations. We may not like how they are run, but they are sovereign nations. And we've not got one thing of proof that nothing bad has happened by them men. Nobody mentions that the day of the so-called last chemical bombing, that Israel had 2 of their own fighter jets there and bombed the same areas supposedly that had the chemical attack, destroying evidence. And then the people who were supposed to, weapons inspectors were supposed to come in, we bombed the day before. Still no proof. Last year when it happened, even Mattis said 3 months ago we had no evidence. Do you know why we're in Syria, young man? We're in Syria because it is the last spot in a large pipeline that runs all through that area like a triangle. And Russia and the United States and the UK are fighting over who gets to have the liquefied gas and the oil. Those so-called moderate rebels, they're not moderate rebels. They're ISIS, al-Nusra. And we, the United States, pay them to go in and overthrow Assad, because 12 years ago, you can look it up online, when Christina Amanpour went online with him and interviewed him and said, you know they're coming for a regime change on you. Now, this is 12 years ago. The next step was what was supposed to happen with those 2 Israeli jets was they were expecting the Syrians or the Russians to shoot one of them down, and they didn't do it. Because had they shot them down, then we'd have the legal right under Article 5 of the United Nations to go in. And because Article 5 states that if you attack one of our people of the United Nations, then you attack all of us. Right now, we are committing war crimes again.
90 seconds.
9/11. No one has ever brought that up. Obama, he extended wars. Obama is a gentleman who is very smart, well-spoken, but Citibank was handed his entire cabinet. And this has always been about who's got minerals, who's got the oil, and who's got the gas.
60 seconds.
Has anybody ever asked why is our country supplying information, ground support, air support to Saudi Arabian jets that are bombing Yemen and have been for 5 years? Because Yemen has, we even have a naval blockade there that doesn't allow for any aid to come in to help the most. These people are starving to death, and they got the worst cholera outbreak. It's because Yemen happens to have the only port for both of those pipelines to come out. And that's where the liquefied natural gas will be then taken to the UK and the United States, and we're trying to keep it out of the hands of China.
10 seconds.
So you've got, in the United Nations, only 5 countries that will not ever be brought up on charges for war crimes. And that is, number 1, the United States, number 2, the UK, France, and Israel and Saudi Arabia. What doesn't look funny there? Saudi Arabia happens to be one of the worst offenders of crimes against humanity besides the United States. The United States has over 1,000 military bases across the world, and that's not even including lily pads. We have had illegal wars ever since, even before Vietnam, that were lied to. And when Nixon took us off the gold standard, we were the only country that had done so at the time. We made a deal with the OPEC, then created the OPEC nations out of Saudi Arabia. And what the petrodollar means is this. In order to have the oil, they have to change their money into American dollars, because it's an illegal bank, by the way. I'm sorry, I'm old, honey, and I'm tired.
Federal Reserve.
The Federal Reserve is an illegal bank. Look it up. It's not even allowed. It was created in 1914, and then in 1915 the IRS was created. Before then, you didn't need permits for your land to build. You didn't need permission to get married. You did all the bullshit that they do now. But the fact of the matter is we're broke. We're broke. We owe China well over $800,000 because of Nixon. That's why they flooded our entire Walmarts, everything's from China. Now, the fact of the matter is the only reason we're still in Afghanistan, there aren't any terrorists there. There haven't been any terrorists there, and we're never getting out of any of these places. I want to ask America this. If the Democrats thought and still say that Trump is so crazy and so unstable and saber-rattling and war-hawkish, which he is, why in the hell did they go ahead and vote to give him $700 trillion and another $80 trillion extra for war? Why did they go ahead and help expand his powers to spy on his own people? Edward Snowden told us that this was going on. Well, now it's even worse. It's beyond worse. They actually make televisions through Toshiba and a few others that use those smart TVs where you can plug your phone in and all that. That listens in on you. My own phone listens in on me. And when Obama took the linchpin out of the it's called the not the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, of suspending habeas corpus, which means that they can throw you in prison without any charges, indefinitely, without any kind of representation through your lawyers. There's no lawyers. No, they just grab your ass and you're gone, and they don't know where you're at. Okay? Black sites. This isn't conspiracy bullshit. This is real. So if they can do this to American citizens, and right now in Seattle, Washington, they are writing it into law that if you happen to be protesting, which happens to be your First Amendment right to do so, peacefully protest. Let's say Wells Fargo did its umpteenth bullshit thing to us. And we decide we're going to go down there, and we're going to go downtown here, and I'm going to picket that they took my money, and they opened up credit cards in my name, ruined me. Well, that's now called being an economic terrorist. Use the word terrorist, you are now in a site where nobody finds you. We got private prisons built for this stuff now here in the U.S. Now, here's a good one for you. Mike Pompeo, Mr. I believe in the apocalypse because he believes so much in Christ, of course, coming back to God obviously needs his help, right? So you got Pompeo going to be Secretary of State, but before he's even Secretary of State, he was sent over to North Korea. The CIA went right over to North Korea. With that, not as Secretary of State, he went over as a CIA man. Now the woman who's going to take his place is wanted in Germany and cannot leave this country. Why? Because she's a war criminal. She kidnapped a man from Germany, the wrong man, and took him to Taiwan. And that's where they tortured him. And they couldn't get anything out of him because he didn't do anything wrong. They dropped his ass back off alive. I don't understand that one, but thank goodness. She can't leave, but she's going to be the head of the CIA. He, the head of CIA, is now head of Secretary of State. And then they happen to just leak that, oh, hey, guess who's running for Democratic seats here in midterms? Ex-military, ex-CIA, and Department of Defense people for running for Congress and running for our Senate. So we're going to have a Senate full of CIA. We're going to have a Congress full of them. We're going to have representatives full of them. We're going to have the head full of them. And we're going to have a guy who believes he's going to help bring in the rapture along with this crazy nut job, Mr. Mustache. I keep wanting to call him Porter, but it's not. It's Bolton. He ain't met a war he don't ever, that he never loved. Our country's in some deep shit, people. We are the terrorists. We're the terrorists. You don't know that because you ain't young enough or old enough to remember. You never knew people that were old enough to understand and see and show you and tell you. Your schools don't teach you nothing. When Hitler lost, we took all of that information and we used it ourselves. Now, we have over 90% of this earth covered in our own military, and the only reason no one stands up to us is because we're the only one crazy enough to blow everybody up. Now we're for sale. Our military's for sale. And if you don't believe me, John Kerry got in front of Senate, and it was on Jimmy Dore's show, and he showed it, where he stated Saudi Arabia just put a money on the table and said, hey, you take out Syria and Iran for us and we'll pay for the whole thing. The congresswoman who asked him in return was, well, what kind of money are we talking about? The man started to giggle. He says, well, ma'am, it's quite a bit. So our military's for sale. You want to talk on your cell phones every 6 months? They make them new ones. Needs lithium. Who's rich in lithium? Oh, I don't know. Afghanistan. How come we're in a country that in war and we don't know about it until a young, beautiful black man's killed and his wife is smeared all over the media and nobody knows that we've been there for 5 years? We've hoarded ourselves to the highest bidders. And every country fears us because we drone. There are children who don't go out and don't even know what a blue sunshine looks like. Why? Because drones can't come out when it's cloudy. They can't see you. So we better get our shit together. We better get it together real fast. Because our day's coming up. We're only 250 years old. There are dynasties older than us waiting on us. They got nothing but time. And someone's going to turn around and bloody our nose and knock our dick in the dirt. So we better stop worrying about things that we can't control. And we better start getting some math together. Everyone talks about this 1% versus 99%. Well, y'all been brainwashed to think that 99% of you are just nothing. That you have no power. That you should be afraid. Well, guess what? If 99% of us showed up on our Washington, they worked for us. We rolled up in our wheelchairs. Those old dying fuckers, you put us up first. You take us up in our wheelchair 4 or 5 deep, and you put it online, and you put it up there on the up there to watch it. You watch the country, let the world see what our country does to its own people. Let them shoot us down, tase us, throw us in jail, do whatever to our old bones, because, honey, we ain't nothing but dirt anyways. And the rest of you 99% get up off your ass and quit fighting with each other and you take back your country. Because they sure as hell ain't going to give it to you. The 3 top highest, richest men in America. Jeff Bezos alone can take 1/3 of his income, the richest man in the world, and end world hunger. What does he do? He grinds his people to the ground to the point where they wear little wrist thingies that vibrate and make them go faster. They're making them pee in places. He has ambulances waiting outside of his thing, making sure that, well, hey, they passed out. Take them to the hospital. Why should I spend money on air conditioning? I want to leave you with this. The 28th Amendment. Congress shall make no law that applies to the citizens of the United States that does not apply equally to the senators and representatives in Congress. And they shall make no law that applies to senators and representatives that do not apply equally to the citizens of the United States. So that's your key, people. If they're going to spy on you, you turn around and say, okay, fine, then it's okay for me to spy on you. You want to make laws where you can put me in jail without any cause and without any charges? Well, I charge you. Officer, take him to jail. Start getting smart before they change our Constitution to the point where it's not even worth wiping your ass with. I'm sorry I got ucky with my mouth, but I got grandbabies and children that deserve as much as everybody else's world's grandbabies do. Peace. The whole world deserves peace. We deserve clean water. We all deserve to be treated like decent human beings and not like cattle. And they're not going to take another penny from any of us. Stop paying your taxes. Stop doing whatever it takes to make that machine run. You don't have to be violent. You just have to make the world see that we are not what we say we are. We are the biggest hypocrites around. And if you're going to sit and fight with your neighbor over being a Republican, or you're going to fight over them being a Democrat, they're both the same wings of the same greedy bird. So how about we decide we fly the way we want to, not the way they say we're supposed to. Either that or we clip the wings of that bird and we put it in a cage.